Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement will please come to order. It is Tuesday, March 17th, 2026, 5:30 p.m., room G15 at the State Capitol Building. A quorum is present. Welcome, everybody. We got a full agenda, so we will start right in. There is, of course, the reminder, no shouting, no signs, no fun of any kind. Will please observe that without me reading the one-page long reminder. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes, Senator Westland?
So moved.
Senator Westland moves adoption of the minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the minutes, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion prevails and the minutes are adopted. With an indulgence, we're going to allow Representative Repinski's agenda item to move to the top. Representative Repinski, if you could come forward, please. That is currently number 5 on the agenda. And our hope, members, is that the good representative has already been here once, should not take too much. Representative Repinski, thank you for your patience as we sorted through. I don't know if you have any comments you want to make, but I believe we're prepared for a motion to add this to the pension omnibus bill. Any comments, Representative?
No, Chair. Frentz, just thank you for moving me up. I appreciate it.
Okay, and members, just to remind everybody, we had thought there was additional information potentially related to this IRAP issue. We gave some time for the State Board of Investment to comment. They have not found any additional information, and with that, the motion will be to pass this bill and add it to the 2026 pension omnibus. Any questions or comments? Senator Rasmusson. And then Senator Pappas. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did we get a response from Minnesota State on terms of what their working hypothesis is in terms of what happened?
We did not get an explanation. However, I should mention that there's an email in your packets just put in there from Chris Dale, who's the Vice Chancellor for Labor Relations at Minnesota State, essentially saying we weren't able to find anything either. So we're left with this Minnesotan who needs some help from us, and I propose that we go ahead and pass the bill, but no further information. Passing the bill to the omnibus bill would not prevent any member of LCPR from asking those questions, though, in the future. Good enough? Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And do we have any information from Minnesota State on how many more people might be in this situation, if any?
We have not heard of a single other reported incident that they're even concerned about, so I guess you can never say never, but we're not told of any other members. Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. Senator Pappas, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering about the A1 amendment.
The A1 amendment was already adopted, I think, at our March 3rd meeting. So what we're proposing here is to pass the bill as amended. Representative, have I got that right?
Yes, Chair.
All right, great.
All right. Without Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because Representative Repinski has been here twice before, and this is his 3rd time, I offline have suggested that Representative Repinski would be a good addition at some point in the future to the Pension Commission because of his opportunity to observe the work of this fine body.
Representative O'Driscoll, we could, I suppose, move that he's required to join LCPR in the future.
So moved.
All right. Representative, you're a good sport for coming here more than once. We will table that motion, but would love to have you consider the LCPR in the future. With that, Representative O'Driscoll, maybe you'd be comfortable moving that Senate File 1213, House File 2117, be as amended, be recommended to pass and incorporated into the 2026 omnibus pension
So
bill.
moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative O'Driscoll made the motion. Any comments or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion prevails. The amendment passes and the bill is adopted. Thank you, Representative. You're a good sport. See you soon.
Thank you.
Members, we're now going to return to what's item 2 on the agenda, Senator Gustafson's 3897. Speaking of legislators that have been patient, thank you, Senator Gustafson. I think this is your 3rd trip to LCPR on this bill. Yes. I was hoping that you'd be comfortable commenting on what I think is your current proposal, which is not to adopt the amendment and to pass the bill as was previously discussed. Senator Gustafson, to the bill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if you want me to run through exactly what this is. It's just a quick review. I'm happy to do that.
I think it'd be best to just have a quick review.
Okay.
Consider the members up to speed, but no harm in being careful. Senator Gustafson.
Thank you, Chair Friends. Senate File 3897 addresses a narrow but important issue in the statute governing the termination of Firefighter Relief Association retirement plans. As more fire departments consolidate or restructure, we're seeing more relief associations go through the wind-down process, and the current statute has created some unintended outcomes. So under existing law, when a plan terminates, retirement benefits for firefighters under age 50 must be discounted to present value or to present value, which can significantly reduce the benefit they ultimately receive. And so the bill removes that requirement that those calculations, and instead allows benefits to be determined based on each firefighter's accrued benefit under the plan formula. So in short, the bill clarifies the termination process, helps ensure it is fair and workable for relief associations, firefighters, municipalities. If needed, we have testifiers here from my cities. This affects 2 cities in my district, Circle Pines, Centerville. We also have other experts who can testify to the language as well. And I am not interested in joining the pension committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Gustafson. I think this is the second week in a row you've reminded me how you don't want to join pensions. Members, you may recall that in the language of Senator Gustafson's original bill, there's an option. I'm just going to have Ms. Linczewski just review the significance of the option quickly. Ms. Linczewski.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. The option is not really spelled out as such in the bill, but what the bill does is it removes the phrase "the present value of" in several places. So what's left is basically retirement benefit or accrued benefit that allows a relief to interpret this in the way that's consistent with their bylaws. So if they determine that a benefit is years of service times benefit level, that's what they're going to do for a retirement benefit. If they'd like to hire an actuary and come up with the present value, that too is an option.
Thank you, Ms. Linczewski. Members, it's the intention to move this to pass and be incorporated into the omnibus bill. So at this point, any questions from LCPR members, comments, concerns before we have a motion? Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Linczewski, I just want to make sure that what we're dealing with here is only the relief. It's only relief funds. This is not PERA SVC. It's not PERA. This is only applying to the relief funds.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. Ms. Linczewski.
Chair Frentz, Representative Nadeau, that is absolutely true. As you'll see here, everything here is amending 424B,
Right.
which is only for relief associations. So that's it.
Thank you.
Representative Nadeau, you're good? Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move that Senate File 3897, House File 3703, as amended, be recommended to be incorporated into the omnibus pension bill.
Thank you for that motion, Senator Pappas. Further discussion? Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is a question for Ms. Linczewski or one of the bill authors. Would this, if this bill is adopted, would this create a difference in how reliefs that are with SVF and reliefs that are not with SVF will be treated upon termination?
Chair Frentz and Senator Rasmusson, I think it probably does create a difference. So in the Relief Association case, they are able to choose whether they're going to use present value or not, whereas over in the SVF, the statewide plan, they are required, PERA is required to run the present value calculation.
Thanks, Ms. Linczewski. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Linczewski. And I guess, I understand what the bill author's intent is with this. I do think we have to be careful and thoughtful and consistent across both reliefs that are with SVF and reliefs that are not with SVF. My preference today would have been to, apply this to the Centennial Fire District Relief Association and to have this be limited so we can have a broader conversation. So just wanted to express those thoughts and concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. And you have runway to continue that discussion even if we pass the bill and move it to the omnibus pension bill. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of parliamentary inquiry. When Senator Pappas moved it, she said as amended. I'm just thinking that we did have the amendment and we ended up taking the amendment off the bill last time. And I just want to make sure that there wasn't another underlying amendment that we were dealing with, just so that we'll have accuracy on that. Maybe Ms. Linczewski can refresh the commission's memory.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize that the amendment was for the previous bill.
Good point, Representative O'Driscoll. And so Senator Pappas, why don't we make the motion again without the reference to as amended?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that Senate File 3897, House File 3703 be recommended to pass and incorporated into the omnibus pension bill.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Having made the motion, further member commentary. Seeing none, all in favor of the Pappas motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. The bill is passed and now incorporated. Thank you, Senator Gustafson, for your patience.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. Thank you also, I wanted to say to Representative Nadeau, my co-author, did an excellent job helping me with this bill, and Representative O'Driscoll for looking out for the amendment. He's a Sartell Saber like me, so I appreciate it.
I think Senator Gustafson has already made it clear she's not joining pensions. Don't ask me how I know. Representative O'Driscoll, House File 4162. Representative, you have the floor. We also have an amendment here at the desk, and I do have Ms. Wilson available to describe the amendment if you prefer.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Ms. Wilson would go ahead and background the bill, and then I will take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. House File 4162 applies to TRA, and the bill requires employers of reemployed annuitants to make employer contributions to TRA during the period of reemployment. The 1A amendment adds a clarification that if a person returns to work for Minnesota State colleges and universities under Section 354.445, then the employer must make contributions to TRA on the reemployed annuitant earnings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Thank you, Representative. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the A1 amendment, as Ms. Wilson said. We have two groups that are contemplated in this. One would be the public school teachers. The second would be the Minnesota State folks who are covered on this. They are both TRA and would apply to both groups equally. So I would ask for the support of the A1 amendment to get the bill in the form that I would like for discussion tonight, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Members, there's a motion to adopt the A1 amendment. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the A1, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The A1 is adopted. Representative O'Driscoll, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I want to give you kind of a larger scoping background on this. If you spend any time at all in the commission, which we have, you will know that one of the things that we're very concerned about is the full funding of the pension plans. And constantly we are looking for appropriations, sometimes single appropriations, sometimes perpetual appropriations to help us with this. And in conversations with folks who watch this kind of stuff, an individual brought an idea to me and said, well, you know, in the school systems right now, when a teacher retires and they come back on a short-term call, or they come back anywhere from 1 day up to another 1-year contract, and they're on their pension, they don't have to pay as the employee into TRA, nor does the school district have to pay into TRA on that. And the suggestion was that because TRA benefits don't change once they have been begun or started in the retirement phase, that you wouldn't want to collect from an employee because you can't recalculate and calibrate what their pension payment would be because they're already on pension, if you will. And we, as the state of Minnesota, through our education finance process, we make money available to the school districts for the purpose of covering expenses for education, books, supplies, materials, other types of things, including money for contributions to public pension plans. And the idea, if the district hires a teacher who's retired to come back, they don't use that money for that teacher who's on pension, and they may use that money elsewhere in their budget. And the primary purpose for the state allocating those funds was not to necessarily encourage the school district to find ways to save money by not paying teacher pensions and having kids being educated. The idea was to have that money there. The unique and interesting part about this is this money will come to TRA unencumbered. When I mean unencumbered, it's not tied to any particular teacher or any particular potential retiree. it falls to the bottom line, which then helps, like the snows we've seen this weekend, to accumulate over time. And it just seemed to me that this would be a way for us to be able to still hold the teacher neutral. They wouldn't have to contribute, but we would be taking the money. That's primary purpose of intent was to fund a pension for a teacher, even though that teacher's in the retirement phase. Keep in mind that had they not hired back someone in that role as a retiree, they would have hired a new teacher, they would still be paying that same contribution. So three things, right? If the teacher doesn't retire, they still pay that. If the teacher retires and comes back, they don't pay it. If the district hires a new teacher coming back, the district still pays it. So it seems to me to be consistent with what we want to do as a pension commission to try to use those funds that we've designated in the education formula for pensions to be dedicated to pensions. So I guess I'd like to have some discussion from the commission about that idea, and then I have a couple of other follow-up questions, kind of depending upon the direction that goes with the commission this evening, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Well done. So it's time for the discussion. Members' questions, concerns, thoughts. We have the ability to add this. We can lay it over. We can do whatever the author wants. That would be the chair's intention, to have the discussion and then let you make a request. Seeing no Representative Johnson. Thank you, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. No, I appreciate you bringing this bill forward. This is something, as I learned more about it, like had significant concerns and was trying to, in my own head, wrap how we could do it in a way that protected that employee that comes back, but also make sure that dollars continue to go to the pension fund. Similar to what you said, one of my concerns is that when this happens, you have an employee go out who then starts drawing from their pension, and then instead of replacing that employee with somebody who's contributing, they go back into that spot and nobody's contributing. So it's almost like a double hit on that pension with somebody withdrawing funds and then not contributing in. And just to add on to what you had said earlier about the other option is to hire somebody. And in most cases, if you've got a 30-plus year teacher who retires, they're going to be at the top of that pay scale versus bringing in a new teacher at the bottom of that pay scale, which ultimately would be more cost efficient for those schools and things like that. I think it's a good bill that addresses it and ensures the pension doesn't lose on it and also ensures the employees are in a good spot. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From the memo here, it looks like, and I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly, that this would cost Minnesota school districts a little over $5.3 million per year in terms of the additional contributions that they'd be paying into TRA. Am I reading that correctly? That's.
Thank you, Senator. We'll have Ms. Wilson answer that. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. Senator Rasmusson, that is correct. TRA has sort of estimated that it would bring in a revenue to TRA of $5.385 million. I don't know if we know the breakout of each school district, how many reemployed annuitants they have, and therefore how much each school district would be doing. But this amount, my understanding, is just for the school district, doesn't include Minnesota state colleges and universities.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. And I would just say, when I talk to the school districts in the area that I represent, many of them are facing different budget challenges and different stresses, and just cognizant of kind of adding another cost on top of them right now, especially if it's not going to be funded by the state legislature.
Mr. Chair, if I might comment on
Thank
that.
you, Senator Rasmusson. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Rasmusson, I understand the district's concerns about that. But if we go back to the overriding reason why that money was given to the school districts through the education funding formula was not to find ways to cut corners on things and spend it on other things within the district. It was for the purpose of funding teacher pensions. And so when that falls short of that goal, this commission, I think, needs to have an earnest discussion about what are we going to do? Are we going to in essence, endorse that idea of if you hire someone or give an incentive to hire someone who's not, or who is on pension and not hire someone who would be eligible to go into the plan? I just think it's good governance for us to look at a situation where The employee is winning on that. The district would really be revenue neutral had they been required years ago to do this. It's always difficult to bring it to the table at some point. But again, if we look at the plans, some are better funded than others, and TRA is one that we continually get requests about changing benefits and things. Although it's $5.6 million a year, 10 years, that's going to be over, pretty close to $60 million that we're looking at. And you can buy a lot more things and do a lot more things for folks with $60 million plus growth than you can with no money going into there and no growth on no money.
Excellent point, Representative O'Driscoll. I'm going to go to Senator Rasmusson and then Senator Pappas. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just a question for the bill author. To make sure I understand this correctly, so you would have individuals who are receiving an annuity but are reemployed. During this time of reemployment, are their pension benefits changing at all?
Representative O'Driscoll.
Mr. Chair, thank you. The pension benefit that the annuitant receives is fixed based on their work career. If they choose to return to the classroom or to covered employment, they will not be contributing, nor will their benefit be recalculated or calibrated to reflect additional employment. Again, the savings that they have is they won't be paying in. Again, my issue is not on the employee's part because they're set. The issue is on the district side, whether or not the commission believes that the district should be held accountable for putting that money into a pension plan when that is the purpose for those funds that were sent in the education formula to cover classroom teachers and to provide a benefit. Again, the unique part about this is we've got a teacher in the classroom, we've got unencumbered dollars that are coming in that raises all boats of those who are still not drawing pension at the time that those funds go in.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment on that. Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. My concern with that concept is that effectively in pension policy, you want to match assets with liabilities. When you're creating a new liability, you want to have assets to back that up. And to have the pension system be the most fair, you actually want to track the contribution of assets to meet the creation of liabilities. And I worry with this bill, we'd effectively would be having no change in liability being created by the reemployed employee, but we would be having assets coming in that wouldn't necessarily be paying for a benefit directly to the employee or even to the employer. It's just kind of extra money coming into the system. And so I have concerns with that, and I have concerns that the same point, Mr. Chair, that the bill author makes on having more resources go to TRA, which I think is important. I think TRA does need more funding. Those are also dollars that school districts could use to hire more teachers, to give teachers a raise, to do other things within their budget. And so those are just a couple of the concerns. But I appreciate Representative O'Driscoll bringing this point because I know I have heard about this over the last few years as we have debated teacher pension reform and other trade-offs in the system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. We're going to go to Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chair, before we go to Senator Pappas, if you don't mind, I'd just like to make one quick comment.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Yeah, to Senator Rasmussen's point about balancing liabilities with assets on this, I would agree with everything he said, and I would just change one word. When the state of Minnesota puts additional money into the TRA plan from appropriations, we increase the asset base without increasing liabilities. And you have to ask yourself whether or not back in time we should have been doing something like this to prevent leakage in this particular situation.
It's an excellent point. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly would like to hear from TRA on this issue. And I'm just wondering, however, why school districts would hire a retired teacher. I would assume because they can't find a newly graduate teacher to fill that position. Because certainly their incentive would be to hire a newly graduate teacher at a much lower rate. Because when you look at the list here about the reemployed annuitants, some of them are making quite a bit of money, more than a starting teacher would make. So they're trying to fill a need. They can't find anyone. So they brought a teacher back into the system. And so I'm not really sure then that we should, punish the school district, if you will, by requiring them to put more into the pension fund when they already have put significant into the pension fund for this retired teacher. So it would be lovely to hear from school districts on this issue, actually.
Mr. Chair, I
Thank
can
you, Senator
provide
Pappas.
some background from the folks that had brought this to me. In greater Minnesota, and I would even say that that's probably north of where I'm from in the central Minnesota area, you have a lot of specialized teachers in special education or other areas that literally what's happening is districts are stealing them from one another. Right? You could have a teacher who in a 10-year period of time might have taught in 2 different school districts because they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, as the saying goes. And so what happens is you have someone who's in a specialized area. There may not be anyone available in that place, so they work with that teacher to come back. It's no different than had that teacher stayed on as far as student-facing. They're still paying them the same kind of salary, different types of things. All we're doing then is just taking that pension contribution that the districts would be making, paying that to TRA, holding the employee in the situation where they wouldn't be required to make their contribution, and again, putting unencumbered funds into the plan.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Senator Pappas, you good? I mean, I think it's an excellent point also that the district is getting a teacher. One of the costs that comes along with hiring a teacher, whether it's a newer teacher or a more seasoned teacher, is the pension cost. So there's an argument that this is what the districts are for. Having said that, appreciate the discussion. Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. I was actually talking to Ms. Lincheski about this a month or so ago, and she said, well, just wait, this bill is coming. So, I think, members, this is think about $5.3 million across our 800-plus school districts. This is not significant one way or the other. And so I think we have to look at it from a public policy standpoint, and that's how I was approaching it, is if in my districts, I have really big school districts. I have Anoka Hennepin, I have Rogers, Elk River, I've got Buffalo, and I've got Maple Grove, Osseo. They have, between 10 and 30 subs every day. They are struggling to find teachers to come in and fill those positions. And so when I talk to my districts about it, it was, they're a big district, I get it. They probably look at things differently than, some of the school districts in Otter Tail, and I totally respect that. But this to me is it's a public policy decision, and are we going to allow certain teachers to teach for districts without making those pension contributions? And I fall on the side of no, we're going to make, those things should be paid on behalf of, the pensions that are being paid out. The $5.3 million is not going to, maybe TRA should get up and talk about how that's going to benefit, their unfunded pension liability. But I think it's a public policy decision, and I think it's a good one. Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. Further comments to the bill before we go back to the bill author? Seeing none. Representative O'Driscoll, I'm comfortable laying it over. I'm comfortable moving to add it to the pension omnibus bill. Your final comments and maybe a request.
Chairman, I did ask for Mr. Maurer to comment.
I'm sorry.
from TRA.
Mr. Maurer, do you want to come forward? Mr. Maurer, welcome back to LCPR. If you could introduce yourself, and then I think Senator Pappas has a question for you.
Sure, Senator Frentz. My name is Tim Maurer. I'm the Executive Director of the Teachers Retirement Association.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Maurer, I just wanted to know if TRA had a position on this bill.
Mr. Maurer.
Senator Frentz said, Senator Pappas, the TRA Board of Trustees has not taken an official position on this bill. We've discussed return to work provision in depth over the past several months, starting in August and going through the fall. They're well aware of the revenue that would be generated from this bill, and they have discussed it. But at this point, there is no official position on the bill.
Thanks, Mr. Maurer. Senator Pappas? You're good. Further questions for Mr. Maurer since he's up there? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Representative O'Driscoll.
So, Mr. Chair, you said that, we could move it or lay it over, and I said that as we got into the discussion, I was going to add some additional color commentary on this. So as this particular provision is making its way around and people are learning about it, I've been approached by yet another group of people who have said, well, if you're going to do this to the teachers, why aren't you looking at doing this to return to work people who are covered by PERA or MSRS or PERA, PNF, St. Paul teachers, other plans, because if the goal is laudable here, it's also laudable in all of the other areas, and we'd be treating all of our children the same way, if you will, from the different pension plans. So I wanted to throw that out there to see if first of all, if you like the idea, and second of all, if you wanted to have further conversations about broadening that and what that might look like. It certainly is something we can lay over and have more discussion on, but it's something that I wanted to bring to the commission's attention after we had the initial discussion for contemplation. Again, if it's good for one group, it's maybe good for all groups. Mr.
Good
Chair.
for the goose, good for the gander. Representative O'Driscoll, I'm fine laying it over if you prefer. How about we hear from Senator Rasmusson? To that point, Senator.
To that point, I think it's either good public policy for all these plans, or it's bad public policy for all these plans. I think I would argue it's, when we have cities, counties, the state, school districts, all facing tough choices with their budgets, all going to, increase property taxes. I just am a little hesitant to add an additional cost onto those employers, especially when it's not tied to any specific benefit increase or anything that they would be getting in return. So those are just some of the concerns I have with this proposal of TRA, but I, Mr. Chair, agree with Representative O'Driscoll that if it's good for one or bad for one, it's good for all or bad for all. And so I think taking a comprehensive approach could make sense.
Okay, I'm interpreting that as an argument that we want to have a little more discussion, possibly lay it over. Does that sound agreeable to you, Representative O'Driscoll?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chair. And again, I want to explore the idea in good faith with everyone, because I just think it's an opportunity to look at. And, this commission and this legislature can decide what the contribution rates are going to be. And to the point of adjusting employer contributions, there's no guarantee that there's going to be money following from the state to meet those obligations. So as aptly was pointed out by Senator Rasmusson, there are budget issues, but this legislature can and has in the past moved some of that pension liability back to the employing entities without providing additional funding. And again, it goes back to your philosophical question: should these funds have initially and originally been designated for pensions when we have the folks who are teaching in those qualified positions that are pension eligible, even though they may be retired? And that's become pretty prevalent since we've given a number of exceptions, in my opinion, over the years to the return to work for teachers and some others during COVID and other shortage areas and things. And this is just maybe something that its time has come to look at doing something of this nature to help the plans.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, very, very quickly, I wonder if Mr. Tenzik could just come up, because he just texted me and said, this has been the policy for rehired retirees with St. Paul Teachers Pension Fund. And how is that gone?
Thanks, Senator Pappas. Sounds helpful. Mr. Tenzik, welcome back to LCPR. Introduce yourself, and if you have some thoughts to share, now's the time.
Good evening, all. Phil Tenzik, Director, CIO, St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund Association. As Senator Pappas had mentioned, St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund does have this as the policy, so our rehired teachers do have employer contributions. So I don't know for the goose or the gander, but it would align all of the teacher plans if this were to pass.
Thank you, Mr. Tenzik. Senator Pappas, you want any follow-up?
Mr. Chairman, I just wondered if you've had any pushback from St. Paul schools about doing this, or I know you're probably the least funded pension plan and can use those additional revenue, but have the schools had any issues with this, or you've just been doing it so long they haven't?
Mr. Tenzik.
Chair Frentz, Senator Pappas, we haven't had any issues from the schools. And I think the key point of differentiation is, to Senator Rasmussen's point earlier, this isn't funding a new liability, it's funding an unfunded liability. And so that's where we've got the alignment of incentives with the district and the liability, even though these are teachers that aren't going to draw additional pensions.
Senator Pappas, you're good? Further comment before we lay the bill over?
Mr. Chair, I would just comment on this.
Sure,
And I
Representative O'Driscoll.
appreciate this discussion, and I think this underscores exactly what I was talking about. If you recall, last year, we had $80 million, and we divided those $80 million, and the school district that's currently doing what I'm proposing today lost out on a share of that money. And so in theory, they are funding an unfunded liability on their own, that others receive money to be able to fund their liabilities in the TRA program. And Senator Pappas, I know you are keenly aware of what I'm referring to.
Excellent point. Again, Representative O'Driscoll, I take it you're comfortable with us laying the bill over?
I'm comfortable with laying it over,
Right.
and, if members have questions or others want to work on this, because I think that this is a shift in good public policy to this, and we've already have one of our children, as I refer to them, with our plans in this, and it just seems to be pretty good public policy. And so, Mr. Chair, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Excellent discussion. With that, House File 4162 is laid over. We'll then go to the next item on the agenda, which is Senate File 4330 and House File 4167. Senator Rasmusson and Representative Nadeau. Senator, Representative, welcome to LCPR from this table. Ms. Wilson can do a staff memo review. You can make introductory remarks. This is the TRA administrative bill. Your preference?
Go for it. I mean, we have a lot to say.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. Senate File 4330, House File 4167, as you noted, is TRA's administrative bill. The bill adds a definition of medical provider, and in that definition of medical provider adds a physician assistant, so that all medical providers can examine and submit a report in support of a member's application to receive or continue to receive disability pension benefits. Thank you, Chair Frentz.
Thanks, Ms. Wilson. Well done. We do have a testifier. Do either legislator or authors want to offer any comments before Mr. Maurer comes up? I'm seeing some shaking heads. Representative Nadeau?
Members, this is a very technical bill. It doesn't change the way that the disability is measured, other than the fact that it changes it from having to have two to has one or more. And it adds physician's assistants, which will be super helpful in greater Minnesota. As physician assistants, there's about 4,000 of them in the state. They are high-quality healthcare providers, and it will provide more access for more teachers to get the diagnostic requirements that they need.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. Mr. Maurer, will you come forward, please? Mr. Maurer, welcome back. Can you please present some testimony on the bill?
Thank you, Chair. My testimony is very brief, and we've already touched on a little bit of it. It's mostly just to say that the purpose of adding the physician assistants is to give our members an additional option. This change does not change the disability application process, the qualification requirements, and would still require one of the two medical forms to be submitted by a licensed physician.
That was brief. Thank you, Mr. Maurer. Members, the intention would be to vote this on to the pension omnibus bill. Any discussion, questions for the authors, question for Mr. Maurer? Seeing none. Final comments from the authors?
Mr. Chair, I would just move that Senate File 4330 and House File 4167 be recommended to be incorporated into the pension omnibus bill.
Senator Rasmusson moves that Senate File 4330 and House File 4167 be recommended to pass and be incorporated into the 2026 Omnibus Pension Bill. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion prevails, and the bill is adopted. Expeditiously done. We already covered. All right. All right.
Can I use them?
So members, we have the Chair's bill up, so hopefully you've prepared many amendments and many questions. Chair Frentz, if you'd like to go ahead and offer your bill, or
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for considering Senate File 4276 and House File 4074, authored by Representative Lillie. I thought we might ask Ms. Wilson to review the staff memo on this. Mr. Chair, if that'd be okay with you.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Wilson?
Thank you, Representative Lillie. Thank you, Senator Frentz. This is MSRS's administrative bill, and I will just go through the quick section by section here of the bill. Section 1 revises MSRS's coverage positions to clarify that a state employee is covered by the general plan unless they are covered by the correctional plan. Sections 2 to 5 amend section 352.029. And that section is clear that a state employee is covered by the general, who is covered by the general plan, can elect coverage by the general plan while on a leave of absence to work for a labor organization. And while that section references the correctional plan contributions section, it isn't clear whether a correctional member can also elect to remain in the correctional plan. So the changes in sections 2 to 5 just make it clear that a member of the correctional plan can elect to stay in the correctional plan. Section 6 revises MSRS's annuity application procedures to conform to MSRS's current practices. Sections 9 to 10 and Section 14 remove the ability of a member to elect coverage by the fire marshal subplan. This is sort of a special coverage section. And instead requires coverage for members first employed as a deputy state fire marshal after June 30th, 2026. Section 11 amends a section that lists the types of covered correctional service, just to add in that prior section that we were just discussing, sections 2 to 5. Section 12 applies to the Correctional Plan Membership Committee, which reviews changes to coverage by the correctional plan. Section 12 makes it so that the committee is not subject to the open meeting laws of 13D and the agency appointment and registration requirements of sections 15.0597 and 15.0599. The last section, section 13, is a session law that applies to the 2 current deputy state fire marshals who missed making an election of special coverage, and section 13 just allows them to make that special coverage and make payments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. Chair Friends, would you like to offer more, or would you like to hear from?
I do think we should take testimony from the 2 listed testifiers, including Mr. Vaughn and Mr. Bruce, if that's agreeable, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Vangen, and on deck is Mr. Bruce. So please introduce yourself for the record and go ahead when you're ready, please. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Lillie and members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Jenkins Vangen. I'm the Legislative Liaison from the Minnesota State Retirement System. As Alina has already said it all, the only thing I have to say is that we estimate the cost to the 2 employees at $4,800 and $2,900 respectively. And the cost to the Department of Public Safety for both employees is approximately $12,000. So that's what I wanted to add. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll be ready to take your questions.
I think we'll wait a couple seconds. Please, stick around, and thank you, Mr. Vangen. Mr. Bruce, introduce yourself, please, and go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Devin Bruce. I'm the Director of Legislative and Political Affairs for the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees, MAPE. We represent about 18,000 state professionals across all agencies and boards, including the 2 deputy fire marshal investigators who are impacted by provision in this legislation. To keep it very brief, you already have a letter from them in your packets, and to answer or preemptively answer Representative O'Driscoll's question, yes, they have received notice that, of the amount that they will pay. They begrudgingly accept and are willing to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. As mentioned, there's some letters in our packet, so please note those if you need to. Chair Frentz, back to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair Lillie. Thank you, members, for taking some time to review the bill. I would move that Senate File 4276, House File 4074 be adopted and incorporated into the 2026 Omnibus Pension Bill.
Thank you for the motion. Is there any discussion in regards to the motion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? You're included, Mr. Chair.
Nice job. Nice job.
Thank you, Mr. Vangen and Mr. Bruce. Senator Frentz, Mr. Chair, we have another bill, and
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'd like to have the panel consider Senate File 4373. This is a bill worth discussing, and I would like to ask Ms. Wilson to provide a summary of what I have here, which is the A1 amendment, which I'd like to move the adoption of the A1 after the staff review.
okay, thank you, Chair Frentz. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Lillie. The 1A amendment, just a little background. Each of Minnesota's public pension plans allows members to purchase service for credit in the plan for various leaves of absence. The 1A amendment just clarifies that a member of St. Paul Teachers who is on a leave under the Minnesota Paid Leave Program can purchase service credit for that period. LCPR staff did speak with Mr. Tensick, and St. Paul Teachers concurs with the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. Chair Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. The significance of Senate File 4373 is the question of counting paid medical and family leave and calculation of a salary benefit. The bill, as amended, essentially says that payments made to a member from the Family and Medical Benefit Insurance Account for Minnesota paid leave will not be included in a member's salary for pension purposes. And I think that is the appropriate move for the state of Minnesota, and would ask for questions concerned or background if you want.
Okay, so thank you, Chair Frentz. I don't believe we've done the motion to the amendment. Chair Frentz, would you move the amendment?
Mr. Chair, I would like to move the A1 amendment.
Okay. Any questions regards to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Amendment approved. Chair Frentz.
Thank you. Again, members, this is a matter of clarification about whether paid family and medical leave benefits would count in the salary calculation. The bill before you says that they would not. And with that, I would ask for LCPR member support.
We have some questions. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is either to the bill author, Ms. Linczewski, or whoever is best positioned to answer this. Before paid leave was implemented, I'm assuming that many employees had some type of paid leave program that they had negotiated with their employers or that they had as a part of their benefit package. How were those payments treated in terms of calculations towards benefits? If you were a teacher at the Fergus Falls School District and there was a paid leave program that was offered before this state-run plan, how was that treated in terms of pension benefits?
Mr. Chair, who would you like to?
I think Ms. Linczewski or Ms. Wilson are positioned best.
Ms. Linczewski.
Okay, Chair Lillie and Senator Rasmusson. The difference here, so I believe, and we could ask one of the plans to come up and talk on this, I believe payments for other types of leave are considered salary for pension purposes. The distinction here is that these are payments coming from the state, so it's like workers' comp. So it isn't counted, and that the workers' comp exception has been in law for a long time, so this is adding a similar type of payment, so it's not, it's not coming from an employer, so it is not salary for pension purposes.
Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess this is going to be for Ms. Linczewski, the bill author. What are the distributional impacts of this? Like, could you just talk me through what the implications are, again, if you're a teacher in Fergus Falls and you're using paid leave, what impact is this going to have on your pension?
Ms. Wilson, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lillie. Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. So this kind of goes to the 1A amendment of being able to purchase credit for that past service. So if you are getting a payment from the state under the paid leave program, it wouldn't be counted towards your pension. You wouldn't be paying on that amount towards your pension. But if you then choose to purchase credit for that time that you are away, you can do that. And so from my understanding of the statutes, the other plans already allow you to purchase credit for past service for leave of absences, and they aren't specific to the paid leave program. So that is sort of how it would affect your pension. You could choose to purchase service for it if you desire.
Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just make sure I understand. So if this bill becomes law, you would basically, while using the state's paid leave program, none of that benefit, or there would be no salary that would kind of count towards the pension benefit, but you could have the opportunity to buy back that time towards a pension benefit. So would this reduce the liability for the plans unless they were to buy the service credit? I'm just trying to understand the implications.
Ms. Wilson, or Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Lillie. I'm not sure about reducing the liability of the plans. That might be a question for the plans themselves. But as far as, yes, if it is a payment from the state under the program, that would be the amount that you aren't paying on that you could buy back later.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Rasmusson, part of the calculation is to the question of high five, and so Ms. Strangey's willing to add a little bit of discussion to that in the calculation, if I understood your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just, I'm sorry, I missed that Ms. Strange was going to testify, so please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Chair Lillie.
That might have helped the discussion.
Fine. Chair Lillie, commission members, my name is Amy Strini. I'm the policy coordinator for PERA. I can talk tonight, I promise you. I'm just going to speak from PERA purposes. Senate File 4373 clarifies that the paid leave payments are ineligible salary. This means that contributions are not taken on that payment, and members then have the opportunity to purchase that service at a later date. The reason why a member may make that choice to do it is really if they need the service credit or the high five for the salary implications. Our current statute, this bill also impacts PERA a little bit more, is that our current statute requires certain thresholds for supplemental pay, like the use of sick time, vacation time, or PTO for medical and non-medical authorized leaves to meet certain thresholds in order for that to be eligible salary. We are asking the commission, and what the language does is it eliminates that threshold. So for PERA's purposes, any supplemental leave for an authorized leave, such as, again, using vacation or sick time, would be considered eligible salary for the purposes of pensions. And then a member would still have the opportunity, if they want to purchase that time, to purchase it for the salary component.
Thank you. Senator Rasmusson, hopefully that helps a little.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That does help a lot. Question for Ms. Stringy, does PERA support this proposal?
Yes, Chair Lillie, yes.
Ms. Strang.
PERA's board has made this one of our legislative initiatives, and we are thrilled that Senator Frentz was able to carry this for us.
So Senator Rasmusson, did you have any additional? I don't know exactly. There were some hands that went up in the crowd. I don't know if Mr. Mauer wanted, if you, Mr. Chair, want that, or if we should just proceed to other member questions.
I'm fine proceeding to member questions.
Okay. Senator Howe. Oh, I thought I saw a lot of squiggling. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to summarize what I heard, I just want to make sure that we're good to go on this. In a negotiated or a district set of benefits where there's sick leave or paid time off and the like, the district covers that. The employee pays their contribution to TRA using the example that Senator Rasmusson talked about, the Fergus Falls School District. And I might add the school district also pays their contribution to the pension plan for that individual. What's different about this particular situation is that it's state paid and employers pay into a third party for this benefit. Question number one is, the payments that the employee would make, would that be both the employer and the employee contribution rate?
Great question. I have to phone a friend
Chair
for that one.
Frentz. Oh, okay, so,
I'm going to invite Ms. Stringy back up. I think that's our best move here.
thank you. Thank you, Chair Frentz. And Ms. Strain, you
Chair
heard the
Lillie,
question?
yes, Representative Driscoll, could you repeat the question for me?
So if an individual is going to be buying service credit because they were out on paid family medical leave, since that's coming from a third party, and it's away from the employer and away from the employee as far as a benefit is concerned in an undercovered service, would the employee be required to pay both the employee and the employer contribution to the plan to be able to support the benefits and keep the liabilities and assets in balance?
Chair Lillie, Representative Driscoll, I believe the answer is yes.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Driscoll.
At what rate would they end up paying that? Because it's, according to the paid family medical leave, it's about 90% of salary. Would they be required to pay or allowed to pay at 100% of salary, even though they weren't drawing 100% of salary reimbursement from the state program? Or would they just be at 90%? And so there may be a reduction in what their annual salary might have been, thus affecting their high five for the last, presumably the last 5 years of service.
Ms. Strange.
Chair Lillie, I believe what you're asking Representative O'Driscoll is if the time that they are missing is replaced by the paid leave benefit, like 60%, what happens to that remaining 40%? If it's an authorized leaves for PERA purposes, that member's entitled to buy back that complete time.
Representative Driscoll.
Thank you. And then the last one would be earned safe and sick time, although that's neither a third-party payer or a negotiated benefit. It's a state mandated requirement benefit for employees. Since that's paid by the district anyhow, that would be something, my assumption would be, that would be subject to normal employee contribution and employer contribution for that time that one's out on earned safe and sick time. Would I be correct in that?
Ms. Strange.
Chair Lillie, Representative Driscoll, for PERA's purposes right now, if that member does not have any supplemental pay that exceeds that 50%, if it's a medical leave, it would not be eligible salary. The language changes that then that would be eligible salary because we don't have that threshold. I don't know what the other plans do for that issue.
Representative Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, again, in establishing good public policy up front on what our intentions want to be on here, so we don't have a future pension commission that's saying, oh, we could have, would have, should have on something like this. I think it's important that we look at and hear from the other plans and develop a go-forward game plan here, since we're in the infancy stages of these new benefit plans, and getting it right so that we understand and can share that information with employer groups and employees so they know what the expectation is.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Oh, sorry. Representative Nadeau.
And
Sorry.
my question has to do with the amendment. So this has to do with St. Paul teachers, and it's only addressing parental and maternity leave. Is there already language that deals with paid medical, family, and so if you could just explain that one to me.
Mr. Tenzik, did you hear the question?
I did. Chair Lillie, Representative Nadeau, there's a difference in the language for how medical leave and family leave is treated under our statute. So medical leave just has to be authorized. It doesn't designate who the authorizer is. So currently that, through the Minnesota Paid Family Leave, is authorized leave, and so that's purchasable. The family leave has to be authorized by the district, by the employer, and so this eliminates the employer authorization and makes it the general authorization. So now both Minnesota Paid Family and medical leave could be purchasable.
Representative Nadeau.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That I'm not following this perfectly.
No.
And if everybody else is, I can take this offline.
No. Chair Lillie,
Mr.
Representative Nadeau, this is difficult to understand. It is challenging. We've had to do quite a bit of research. There's two types of Minnesota paid leave. There's the family leave and the medical leave. And so that aligns with two types of leave that we have in statute, family leave and medical leave. And so for medical leave in our statute, as long as it's authorized either by workers' comp or Minnesota paid family leave, it's eligible for the repurchase. So it doesn't get the direct contributions from the employee, it's just eligible for repurchase. For the family portion, which is a separate program within the Minnesota paid family, our statute says that that can only be authorized by the employer. And so we believe it should be consistent across all Minnesota paid family and medical leave, whether it's the medical or the family. And so this Amendment 1 makes it consistent where both types of Minnesota paid family and medical leave are purchasable.
Just in your statute?
Just for our statute, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Nadeau, any further questions? Chair Frentz, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. It is complicated. We're lucky to have the staff that we have and the testifiers we do. I would move that the bill be passed and incorporated in the omnibus pension bill. I am sympathetic to the discussion of good public policy and how we might ask if we're consistent across all lanes of travel, and still open to those discussions if we put the bill into the pension omnibus.
As amended, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Any questions regards to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Your bill is passed, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. Members, moving on to item 8 on the agenda, House File 4272. Representative Olson, welcome to the Legislative Commission on Pension and Retirement. We have Ms. Lincheski here to review a staff memo if you prefer, or Representative, if you want to introduce it on your own, that's fine too, but you have some help here if you like.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill, House File 4272, is to kind of close a loophole. Individuals who are inadvertently missed in their retirement benefits who I think should be added to it or have those benefits allocated to them. With me today is one of those individuals. He's my old, but not old enough, athletics director from Blue Earth Area High School. So this is Mr. Rob Norman, who is one of the 100 and some individuals who have been, in my opinion, inadvertently left out of this new change that occurred last year. So, Mr. Chair, unless we need any further, I would kind of defer my story to Mr. Norman.
Thank you, Representative Olson. Why don't we have Ms. Lincheski just briefly review the staff memo for members that may be a little bit less familiar. Full disclosure, Mr. Norman was associated with Blue Earth Area Youth Football, which played up in Mankato. Therefore, I am completely biased on this bill and will probably have to recuse myself because of the excellent work those kids did and the coaches too. With that, Ms. Lincheski.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. This House File 4272 revises one statute in Chapter 354, which is the chapter that governs Teachers Retirement Association. The statute states that a member's retirement annuity must be calculated in accordance with the law in effect when the teacher left teaching service. It also states that if a teacher returns to teaching service, the teacher must work at least 1/2 year to be eligible for any benefit improvements enacted after the date the teacher left teaching service. There was legislation in 2023 and 2025 that improved TRA's pension benefits. The 2023 law raised the normal retirement age from 66, or excuse me, reduced it from 66 to 65. The 2025 law changed the early retirement benefit. I won't go into the details about how that actually works because it's incredibly complicated, but it had to do with what the reduction was from a full normal retirement benefit down to an age 60 benefit. But to be clear, in this case, you have to have 30 years of service. So if you had 30 years of service and were not yet normal retirement age, you were able to benefit from this law change if you were employed at the time of the change. So the change in the bill is to revised the statute so that deferred vested members would be able to take advantage of this new benefit. There are some estimates of the cost of this. This was done by TRA with their actuary, CavMac. And just very briefly, there is a letter from the actuary in your folder. But briefly, the cost to TRA is estimated to be approximately $2 million per year if this benefit is fully utilized. So if everybody who's eligible actually then retires, it's going to be about $2 million per year. And then for over 15 years, it would be amortized over 15 years. The one-time cost is estimated to be $26.5 million.
Thank you, Ms. Linczewski. Representative Olson, your testifier is welcome to fire away.
Chair and committee members, thank you for the time. As you heard, I was his former AD, and he actually coached and taught in our school district, and then he left to become one of you. So thank you for that. Anyways, long story short, I've shy of 33 years. I had another former student ask if I wanted to leave education, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. So I had a few months to decide, and I was like, okay, first thing I need to do is I need to go to TRA and meet with them and get some advice from them and see what would happen if I would defer my payment. And well, the one question that I asked, I said, if I would not take anything out and there would be a law that would change, what would happen? Oh, you would fall underneath there because you have the 30 years plus. You're in the golden. You're golden. So I'm like, okay. That was the main reason. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try something different. After 32 years of serving kids and in the communities, I really enjoyed it, but it was, at that time, I thought maybe it might be the best thing for our school district, maybe to have somebody else. So making the change, and all of a sudden, a new law comes in effect last May, and I'm like, awesome, 60-30. I read a little bit more, and I didn't qualify because I wasn't putting in at the time. I'm like, wow. So I missed the Rule 90 the first time. I missed this one just barely again. I'm like, my luck's not very good. So I contacted Representative Olson. I said, hey, I don't know if you know about this, but I think there's probably not a lot of people. And I was, my guess was pretty close. He told me it was like a little over, just shy of 200, I think. So I'm thinking, I'm one of those people. So I'm asking for you all to just think, hey, we missed this little group, and I would appreciate your support if you would pass this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Well said. We have a testifier listed, Ms. Snyder from Education Minnesota. If you come forward, please. Ms. Snyder, welcome back to LCPR. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you think.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Caitlin Snyder with Education Minnesota. We represent 84,000 educators across the state. For the past 4 years, the top priorities for my members have been pay, pensions, and healthcare, and you know how active and engaged my members have been on pensions. This bill tonight, we're happy to support, and it really speaks to the work that the LCPR has done over the last 4 years to improve teacher pensions and to expand affordable retirement options for our teachers, particularly our career teachers who serve decades in the classroom. If there had been a will and a way to make the changes passed last year retroactive to July 1, 1989, I think my members would have found it. But in light of the difficulties and challenges of a proposal like that, and with the fiscal challenges in front of our state, I think this is a really meaningful yet pragmatic approach to honor the commitment that our teachers have made to our classroom. We're happy to support this bill, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Well done. That's the end of the listed testifiers. Members' questions. It would be our intention to move the bill to pass and be recommended to be incorporated into the pension bill. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Ms. Snyder. She don't mind coming back.
Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Was Education Minnesota aware, as the bill was coming through, both in 2023 and in 2025, that teachers who were vested but in deferred status would not be impacted by the pension bills?
Thanks, Senator. Ms. Snyder.
Mr. Chair and Senator Rasmusson, we had many conversations with the Teacher Retirement Association about the feasibility of doing things retroactively. In all of our conversations with TRA, they told us that had never been done, that we did not retroactively do pension improvements in that way. That was my understanding, that we wouldn't be able to do any changes like that. I hadn't thought of this proposal in front of you today, so I'm happy that Representative Olson had a better idea than I did.
Well said. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Snyder, would Education Minnesota support this bill if there's no funding associated with it? If we were to just pass it as is, I don't think there's any funding in the bill. It would create a $26.5 million liability, unfunded liability for TRA. Does Education Minnesota support this regardless of if there's funding attached, or is your support conditional on this benefit improvement being paid for?
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Snyder, if you can answer.
Chair Frentz and Senator Rasmusson, I admire the work that the LCPR has done the last 3 years to have a pension target, and I think that fourth time could be the charm. It's hard to say without the information about the sufficiency in front of me. I will say one of our priorities is intergenerational equity, and this helps move us along to the intergenerational equity between our Tier 1 and Tier 2 teachers. I don't have the sufficiency information for the plan memorized, and so I'm not capable of saying how that would affect TRA's overall solvency.
Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess, for me, that this will have a cost to TRA. TRA, in terms of our statewide plans, is one of the least healthy in terms of its current unfunded liability. And I just, again, have concerns about adding more onto that without having a funding source identified. And so I would have a tough time voting on something like this until we know if this commission is going to have a target and if we'll be able to pay for this new liability that would be created by adopting this bill.
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I empathize with the gentleman that he kind of missed the window for enhanced benefits, but we do have other issues. We still have not dealt with the inequity between TRA and the St. Paul Teachers Fund. And so I'm not really prepared to move on this tonight until we kind of have the whole picture in front of us.
Senator Pappas. Thank you, Senator Pappas. Other comments? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems like it's deja vu all over again, because I did ask this very specific question last year when we were looking at this. What happens to the teachers who are on deferral on this? And I was told that the way that the bill is crafted and that people were aware of the fact, and maybe not individuals were aware of that, but the people who are working on the bill and those who are putting it together were aware of the fact that it would require additional service to be able to be eligible for that benefit. If you are already in the 60-30 category, you didn't automatically get moved into that. That was a question that I clearly remember asking last year about this topic, because I knew that there were going to be people who were going to be in that situation and trying to figure it out. So I just bring that up for consumption. And Senator Rasmusson, I do know I can give $5.6 million a year that can go to TRA that can help with that unfunded liability.
Setting aside the $5 million, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And when I read the actuary's report on this, I guess I was optimistic. I mean, you look at this and there's always gaps, and I support what you're trying to do, Representative Olson. And I think it's an interesting path, but I worry about setting precedents on, it's only 198 people, which that's, I don't have a problem, basically looking at this and saying it really doesn't have any significant measurable impact on TRA that we can see. So on that side of it, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. This is super unfortunate. This is a teacher that spent 30 years, in the classroom. And that's what we do. We want to fund 30-year pension programs, but because of decisions that were made, years ago, in all sorts of ways, there's inadequate revenues to basically get beyond some pretty significant discounts that we really worked hard at in the last 4 years to try to remedy. And so this one is falling, it's in the gap. And so I support this, I worry about the precedents moving forward, because there's always people that are going to come to us and say, well, I didn't quite make the cutoff. And we've heard it from teachers since the first day I got here. I've heard from teachers that say, I missed the rule of 90 by a day, by a week, by a month. And I mean, that was in 1989. And so there's always these people that are in this gap. And so that's what I worry about. I mean, I am supportive of trying to figure out how to fund this without setting a precedence where we open ourselves up to something worse, I guess, looking forward. And I'll continue to work with you on this, regardless of what happens here today.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. Senator Seeberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with everything that Representative Nadeau said. And in my view, and being on pensions this is only my 4th session on pensions, there's never going to be enough money to do everything that we need to do to make pensions right for the people that deserve them. To the extent that we get any money to do anything for teachers this session, my priority remains the St. Paul teachers who were left out of the deal last session. They are my priority, so I can't support this as much as I would like to, because we still have to take care of the St. Paul teachers.
Thank you, Senator Seeberger. Further member comments, questions,
Mr. Chair.
amendments? Ms. Snyder.
For the record, Education Minnesota is excited to testify in support of a bill for the St. Paul Teachers Association.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Senator Rasmusson?
Mr. Chair, can I ask Ms. Snyder a question?
Of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Snyder, did you support the inclusion, or did Education Minnesota support the inclusion of St. Paul teachers in the 2025 bill?
Ms. Snyder.
Mr. Chair and Senator Rasmusson, we supported what we felt we could achieve within the TRA pension proposal. That was the majority of our members were fighting for a 60-30 career rule, unreduced career rule, and we had to settle on an enhanced career rule. That was the priority for our membership, but that doesn't mean that we can't continue a conversation. We represent 84,000 people across the state. We have priorities in healthcare, we have priorities in pensions, we have priorities in reducing class sizes, and unfortunately their backlog is too heavy. But we stand ready to support a St. Paul pension bill.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be clear in my question to Ms. Snyder. Did Education Minnesota support or oppose the inclusion of St. Paul teachers in the 2025 pension reform bill?
Ms. Snyder, if you have anything to add to your previous answer, now's the time.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say for the record that Education Minnesota opposed the inclusion of St. Paul teachers in the 2025 pension bill. And so that is part of the challenge we're hearing today, is on amendments to try to include them and have equity. The union that they pay dues to oppose that inclusion. So I just want to say that. I know Ms. Snyder was unwilling to, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Thank you, Senator Rasmusson. Further comments or questions? A couple notes for the panel. First of all, the funding status of TRA, if this bill becomes law, would change from 81.60% to 81.55%, 5/1,000. So that's the perspective for LCPR members. TRA has discussed this but does not take a position on the bill. That's relevant to some of the questions. And we have testimony from Education Minnesota in support of the bill. So I think here's what we're going to do. Let's have Representative Olson have his final comments, and then let's lay the bill over with a commitment to have a little conversation on this bill as we go forward. Members comfortable with that? Representative Olson, you're tracking here?
Yeah.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I would answer a lot of the comments that were had here. We had individuals talking about how, oh, they missed the rule of 90. Well, I can't affect when I was born, right? I was born in the year 1991, so obviously I missed the rule of 90 when I started teaching. But this wasn't just missing something. This was a man-made gap that was created. This was a crack that Minnesota has created for itself. And that's the difference between missing out on the rule of 90, which I wasn't alive then, so I missed it, right? Oh, too bad for me. I can't wallow in my own pity about that. But when the state of Minnesota creates a gap, when they personally made a crack in the game, Their responsibility is to fix that crack, to mend it, or to at least bridge the gap. And this is the way that we can bridge the gap for less than 200 Minnesota beneficiaries. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's an affordable thing to do. As the chairman has said, it is 5 1,000ths. Like that's a pretty small number to make right what we've wronged, to bridge a gap, or to put a span over the crack that we have man-made. So I can't affect when I was born. The rule of 90 was never within my grasp. But this is something that the state of Minnesota did against Mr. Norman and against 188 other Minnesotans, and it's the right thing to do. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to testify here today. I hope that you will continue this conversation to make it right for my old athletics director and a number of other Minnesotans. Thank you.
Representative Olson's well said. Just for clarity, we've had some other bills held over that we did tonight actually find a way to get passed, and I'm encouraging the conversation to continue. 5 1,000ths is part of the story, but the wrong that you're talking about is why the chair would consider a yes vote on this. With that, House File 4272 is laid over. Thank you, Mr. Norman. To be continued. Members, that's the end of the agenda. Our next meeting is Tuesday evening, March 24th. We'll be hearing the Secure Choice Bill. We'll also have the report and legislation recommended by the probation officers and 911 dispatch pension plan work group. There being no other business tonight, we are adjourned.